It's such an honor and delight to be here and with you this morning. I'm usually also in the States, in Washington, D.C., so it's a treat to get a chance to, travel for work and get a chance to meet with new communities. And so thank you for having me here. I prepared some thoughts, but I really want this time to be intimate and conversational. And so as I share some things and share some tools, please, if you have questions, let me know, raise your hands, express your thoughts. We're going to have some discussions and interactive activities as well. And then we'll have enough time for other Q&As and discussions. And so building on the introduction, a couple other things to highlight, which you will hear, is one of the reasons why I was super thrilled to get a chance to speak with all of you is that I'm not sure how many of you are considered planners by chance. Any planners in the room? Yes, okay, you're my people. I love planning. When I was younger, starting my, school, and, ask my parents, they talk about this and they roll our eyes sometimes. It's like, Monica plans too much. I had that cookie cutter approach of okay, I know what I want to do at this time, that time. I think I want to make sure I get to this stage. Okay, I want to go to this college. Right? We kind of have plans, right? Plans are great though, right? Honestly, plans helped you get to where you are. If you try to navigate without plans in the Google Maps, I'm not sure where we can get anywhere, right? So plans are helpful until a certain point. And I think pandemic has been a beautiful and hurtful and in a way resilient reminder that, hey, yes, we need plans. Plans are great. We don't want to say no plans are good. But the key is planning for flexibility. Because honestly, the truth is, it's more like this, right? We expect, even though with all the planning and even though with all the thoughts of I know how this might work, or I know things might not go the way we want, but we don't ever realize how much it doesn't go the way we thought. And I have to admit, as everyone, I know we're still in year now entering 3, and it looks like, it was not just long ago, but man, when the pandemic first hit, including us and many other people, we didn't know if we can survive. And honestly, as a business where I did everything in person like this that I missed so much, asking our team and everyone to say, you got to be only available online. And by the way, you lost 90% of everything you've done because it was only in person. I freaked out, as many other people did. But I'm here because we want to talk about what do you do in those moments and how do we hence rethink. So a quick insight, I did get a chance to speak with a lot of communities, including schools, academia, organizations, think tank, or some places that you probably heard and noticed. So I want you to be aware that, okay, well, that's cool. She got to speak with a lot of groups, and it was quite fun. I've enjoyed. But as I shared, this was not possible anymore with the pandemic. And while this all looks flashy and nice, I share this into context that honestly, not so long ago, all of this felt impossible. Impossible because I really wasn't sure how any of the things that I was doing was making sense. Anyone ever feel that way, even though you plan? That was where the confusion felt. And to start our conversation, I thought this quote would be a beautiful reminder. No matter how comfortable you are with where you are, or unsure of where you are, the beauty is sometimes we don't know how the not useful stuff to the useful moments actually all connect the dots, including the time you're all spending right here with us today. And so allow me to share how I realized how I started to reconnect the dots my way too. And I hope that inspires you and gives you tools that maybe, these are things I want to do, but also maybe bring back to my family and my children as well. Does that sound like a fair game? Yes? Okay. It's a lot of work to change a slide last minute, so okay. Because as I shared a moment ago, I felt quite stuck. And a lot of close friends that I shared with some of my other colleagues as well. But honestly, I was feeling really rock bottom to the point that I was experiencing depression, even suicidal thoughts, which is, can I be honest, right? You feel like a trusting, worthy people. It was hard. So what did I do? I did eventually get to do all those things, but it took a journey and in unexpected turns. So the three things I love to share is I want to share a little bit about creativity that helped me get out of that rut, that I hope helps you wherever you are. Some thoughts about leadership, which I know all of you are very interested in, both in your journey as well as your children's journey. And then since, what's next? And my goal during this time is to leave you with more questions. I emphasize this because we're at a space where we love to get answers, right? It's like, Monica, I came here to get the best answers. Tell me what's the right hack for creativity, leadership. I want to be able to implement this immediately at home with my children, which is great. And how dare me to say that I know the right answer for every single one of you when I just met you. The specific challenges, the specific questions, the journey that all of you are continuing will be changing and evolving. And so rather than asking you to assume the same answers, my hope is that I leave you with more questions that will help you guide to many more questions and insights. So I'll start with one question that I had to start with, which is, what do you do when you get stuck in your dream job? Because I was. In that introduction, what you haven't heard is that before I got into innovation and creativity was that I was originally in international affairs. Having grown up both in Korea and in the States and worked in Europe and in the States and, in Korea, I felt like, international affairs is perfect. It was an honor to get a chance to find a way to work at nuclear weapons security in the US government. I specialized, started with my fellowship. This is my geeky moment as a non-scientist, hanging out with the scientists, learning how the laboratory works. It was fun. But I got also depressed because what I realized is I worked so hard to be where I thought I wanted to be. And yet I woke up every day feeling like, is this really it? Is this all I have to do? And is this really what I worked hard for? Anyone ever felt that way before? Yes? Thank you. Thank you for not leaving me hanging. I lost track of the days. And to be honest, you can't see me with my mask that I'm smiling and the positive curiosity that I share, I felt like I lost that person. And the most scariest thought was that I can't remember the last time I smiled because I was really happy. And again, even though I thought I was in a job I loved. I thought about all the different thoughts. Maybe it's the stereotypes. Okay, maybe it's the Asian gene in me that's like fighting, and the American dream that's like fighting and saying like, I gotta be perfect in a certain way, gotta show up. I'm also first in the family. I'm still Korean culture, so first in the family, the pressure. They're not pressuring, but like all the stereotypes that I'm building. And it doesn't help, nuclear weapon security, as you can imagine, is a very typical white male dominant, very minority, both in all different spectrums. You walk into the room and they first say, okay, do you have the clearance because you don't look the part? And I'm like, that's not nice. But they say directly to your face because they want to make sure of security clearance. And I'm like, okay, I understand, but all of that come to play. And while we brush aside and say that's not a big deal, but it builds up. And along the way, even though creativity and innovation were things that we speak of, I wasn't really sure if that was really for me. I wasn't really an artist, I would call myself, or necessarily good with music. Yes, I did play the flute, and we're in a music room, so we're talking about all these different art aspects, but these were kind of statements that I felt like, yeah, I believe that too. I'm not really sure if I describe myself as a creative. I think I can be more creative, but even if I am, my work doesn't require. I'm doing nuclear weapon security. You're not supposed to be that creative, right? And I realized as I was telling these comments and thoughts to myself, how that picture was limiting me more, even though others weren't. And the truth came that if I really wanted to get out of this rut, I had to do something about it. And the only way was that I needed to do something different. I just didn't know where to start. And for anyone who's ever felt stuck in any sort, we kind of know how that feels, right? It's like, okay, I know I need to do something different, but like how? What? And sometimes not knowing the what as a planner is like, okay, this is frustrating me. What do I do? What do all of you do? For me, I started with one thing, which was realizing that, okay, I'm crying on my commute to bus, which is, vulnerably admitting and sharing. But I realized what was less embarrassing was not just admitting that I was crying in the bus because I was so upset and drained at what I was feeling, but the fact that, remember your morning commutes before COVID, or maybe it's still same case? Somehow when you're riding that bus, even though you don't know anyone in the bus, it's always the same people because it's the same time that you commute. Yeah, that's what was happening. And I realized, okay, is it weird to admit that what I'm more embarrassed is that I'm seeing the same people who might see me wearing this big sunglass, trying to hide behind the tears and my emotions, and they can see me. So I made a small decision, and it wasn't bold. It's like, you know what? I'm going to walk to work. I'm going to walk to work because at least those people in the bus won't see me. But curiously enough, that one decision changed a lot of other things, which is if you're walking to work instead of the bus, now you got to wake up earlier. I mean, all of you are already here thinking about your morning routines, right? Like thinking about one change, you have to change all these other things. I now have to look at the weather, wear comfortable shoes, look at my outfit because I don't want to be wearing too cold or too hot. Then you get sweaty in the office and you got a second outfit. And then by the time you get to the office, you want to make sure you have your routines of teas and stuff. And the interesting thing is, even though that seems so random, and you're like, Monica, why are you talking about that? That seems a little far-fetched. I'm like, but because of all those unimportant decisions I started to make, when I got to the office, I was now curious. I was like, you know what? I never thought about it, but that building there is always under construction. I wonder why. That place, that traffic is always there. Somehow, that corner, I wonder why. I just noticed that all the buildings have the same rooftop color. I wonder if that's like a mandatory restriction that there is. And so I brought all these questions to the point that when I got to the office, I carried that to the work I did. And now that same work that I felt so stuck and unhappy suddenly felt so much fun because I brought my curiosity and journey there. So that one decision, and it got me realizing that, oh my gosh, how many other decisions can I change by doing one thing differently? And all of you probably know that one decision that helped make a difference, meeting somebody new, getting a chance to meet your partner and your family, deciding, to be in Korea, deciding to be in this school. I had to change something. And so that's when I realized, if I know how powerful this is, how can I help more people realize so that way they're not feeling stuck? Because as you're listening and noticing, unfortunately in society right now, more than 87% of the professionals are stuck in the workplace. And it's not the future that we want to send our kids. How can we do something different now to change the world that they're entering? And what can we do to support? What can we do for our lives? How do we live as a human being instead of a doing that's in a routine? So that led me to now where it is now, and realizing that creativity really is a secret power. It's not just about being innovating and that fancy object that you see, but it's in our life and routine. And so as I continue to travel, I continue to humble myself to remind that, it really started with that one decision. How do I continue to honor that? And not just celebrate the big creativity. Because that moment when I felt stuck, by shifting my mindset and opening up, I was able to find that, hey, it's actually up to me to shift that box of opportunity. And not just wait for somebody else to say, hey, can I open the box for you? So that creative mindset is where I got to then get curious and then dove deeper and build my expertise now to be the person in front of you as a culture, leadership, and creativity expert. I loved my job actually now so much that people were asking like, okay, we got your promotion, but we can't figure out why you like what you do. And because I realized how to change the way I think about everything. Nothing can now be ever as boring because I know how to make that boring thing so fun. And you're going to have kick-in reality moment. No matter how much you try, you're going to have somebody else say, well, like, Monica, that's great, but honestly, that's play. That's not work. It's not going to happen. So part of the lesson that I realized that is so key, and especially probably even for parents, is how do we then encourage ourselves to know that even though this moment might look play and silliness, it's actually rooting for those core elements. When we see our child playing, how do we remember that, hey, this is part of what we're helping them think for the bigger picture of igniting them to think differently? Because it's going to look messy. And sometimes the scary thing is when we're in the midst of it, just like how I was, you probably have your moments of change too. But how do we take the courage to continue on to see the end of it? So I want to invite all of you to indulge me in a little quiz and rewire our brains, shall we? I want to share this formula that I hope you'll enjoy and love as well. And I'll give you a little bit of a hint. C stands for creativity, F is a function, and there's apparently 3 ingredients that are really important in creativity. Can you guess what they might be? Any guess? Knowledge? Yes, thank you very much. K is knowledge, and absolutely makes sense, right? The more knowledge we have, the more different knowledge we have, we feel like we can connect different dots. Thank you very much. Any other one? Imagination, yes, I is for imagination, right? We have to think differently, right? Even if we have the same knowledge, if we're not trying to do something different, it wouldn't work. Thank you very much. What about E? Experience, thank you, but no. Experience is important, but E stands for something else. Enthusiasm, I love that as well, which I enthusiasm about, but thank you, but no. Environment, thank you, but no. I love it though. Emotion, thank you, but no. Experience, thank you, but no. Education, thank you, but no. I know, I wish, but I'll give one more chance. Energy, thank you, but no. Any finals that I missed? Encouragement, thank you, but no. Which is good, because that's what I'm doing here. And if it helps, as I shared that intro slide of all the different places, this is the one that everyone around the world gets a little stuck. So it's not just this room. Empathy, thank you, but no. I know, and then we get to a point where everyone's like, okay, elephant. What else is there? E, any word in the E. I'll share the E, and I think once you see it, you'll be like, oh. Evaluation. Let's do a real case example. The last time you felt like, yeah, that was pretty creative that I did, whatever that moment was. I know you have many, so just think of one as an example. You probably had to connect a lot of different knowledge, right? Your experience actually goes under there as well. Even the random advertise that you saw on your way here is part of the information that you're gathering, right? So that's your K kicking in. But there was this twist that you did. But most importantly, you had a reason why you had to make a decision with it. Your E. And sometimes that E, that constraint, feels not so good, right? It's like, oh, I have this time limit, I have this resource limit, I have these other constraints, it's not really fun. But actually, because of that, we had to make a decision. And that permitted us to actually find that creative light bulb. Now, sometimes when I share this, both leaders and parents are like, oh, that's great, Monica. Well, actually, let's be honest, money's always a concern. We always don't have enough time. We have all these resource constraints. Like, I want to be able to do all these things, but we can't. Maybe I need to say no to my child more. I'm like, okay, that's great, but before you rush that, let's remember what's the other balance. The K and the I. And so it's more about celebrating the constraints and not seeing constraint as the enemy, but equally making sure we make space for the K and I. When we have the 3 harmony, that's when we get new insights, creativity. And then over time, with lots of creativity, is when you will see the bigger C and innovation. Isn't that kind of cool? How are we doing? So far, so good? Interesting? And so I know things in front of you feels tough, whatever that is, and many other things that will continue to place. And honestly, it's going to feel like it's impossible. Honestly, I think when the pandemic happened, there were a lot of things that felt impossible. But what if we just make that small shift and say, it's not impossible. It's possible. And humor me, because I find this quite actually even powerful, that some of us, the planners who like to do a lot of it that I started with, we forget to realize actually the break and the pause is sometimes the most powerful element. And that's the beauty. Yes, we would like to have all the different aspects, but it's the mix of everything. And hey, if you feel like, well, Monica, you're just one person, how does this actually work? Well, let's take it from Albert Einstein, right? That we know that, who has lived through this. He has many quotes, but this is probably one of the many reasons why he really emphasizes, hey, it's not just about knowledge. Imagination is so important. And that's why I'm really excited all of you are here, because you're all here not just looking for answers from A to B. You're looking how to get from A to Z, A to X, A to B, A to C in different ways. That's why I'm excited about that. Not just for you, your life, but also for your family and your children. And we need more of that. I mean, this is the reason why they're here, right? They don't want any education. They're looking for, like, how do we think differently and start that early? That's what I think is so exciting. Because you know the power of thinking about that curiosity, that courage to ask something different now plants that. Because that's where you would ignite innovation. I want to then touch upon leadership a little bit. Once I then get comfortable with creativity, then people get buzz of like, okay, great, I want to be that creative leader. I want to bring all these different insights, ignite my team, be the person, in the magazines and all that jazz, right? And like create these cool things everyone wants. In the tech world, we often describe these people as unicorns in the business, right? You probably heard of that, right? You're like, oh, that's the unicorn. They're so unique. They make a ton of money so fast, and they're so unique that we call them unicorns. And often there is this charismatic leader who's so vocal, kind of chills and walks, wears a t-shirt and just like, oh yeah, it wasn't a big thing, right? You see this vibe, right? But I want to ask the question back, do we really want to just create unicorns as the leader for our future? Is that what we really want? I want to share a couple stories that I hope that, yes, we want leaders to think differently, but maybe in a different way. And Andrea Nui, I respect her so much. She recently retired from leading PepsiCo for a very long time, and one of the few female executives who were there for a long time is. And one of the things that she was very well respected was in her humble leadership style, but with firmness. And this is one of the many quotes in how she communicates her leadership, which I thought would resonate with many of you, is that we're not just looking for leaders who are smart, charismatic. Honestly, that's actually short-sighted. The leaders who actually show up but know that, hey, my work is never done because I'm continually learning, that's where actually they really thrive. That's where the organization and community thrives. And if you think of leaders and individuals that you really probably respect, it's not the one who's like, you know what, I'm done learning. I'm good. It's probably the ones who never stop. Never is like, hey, actually, you shared that last time. Can I learn more? Because I'm not really sure. And is not afraid to share that. And so I say the first lesson in rethinking leadership to build on that creative tools is building the humility and agility. And I would argue that this is going to be even more important in this competitive world, where we are now looking so much for excellence, because we have computers who's getting smarter. We don't need more just smartness. We need a bigger heart and the thoughtfulness. I shared my story a moment ago as well, right? Like everything that I love doing in person, I had to stop. And while I panicked, I realized, you know what? I have to humbly admit that I've never used Zoom before, which I haven't until pandemic, and had to learn how to just turn on the camera, be in front of it, talk, which was very awkward. You don't want to see my earlier speeches because I was very awkward. But it humbled me to remind that, hey, you know what? Actually, when I started speaking I didn't have any training. I had to learn by myself. I had to watch a lot of TED Talks, get comfortable, ask how other people did it, and learned about what made my voice possible. And as I learned how to do that online, create all these spaces, run different programs, community events, client workshops, culture development, I realized, hey, when somebody says, I don't know how to do this, how do I know that, hey, you know what, I said that too, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means you're learning something new. This builds on then the second insight, which is, how do we have more courage to ask? And the courage to be wrong. When I share this in rooms, especially in leadership, as well as, with parents, they're like, oh, Monica, I mean, we would ideally like to be as right as possible. Why would we want to encourage being wrong? But I think all of you are also honestly here because you understand why that's important. I'll share some products as an example. Are you familiar by chance with the WD-40 product? Right? For those who are nodding their head, could you explain what it is? Absolutely. How effective is it?
Right away, very effective.
It works pretty well, right? I mean, this is the reason why, thank you very much. This is the reason why that they got their fame and recognition and quality and excellence. And I'm not sure if you knew, but the product was first invented, that quality of product, in the 1950s. It's kind of incredible, right? Like, we're in 2022 and it's still that good. But to get to that, do you know how many times they tried to make this product? Your hint is right. So WD-40 actually stands for the water displacement perfected on the 40th try. I know, when I first learned that, I was like, what? Okay, that's a cool story, but oh my gosh, let me take a step back. How many do we try 40 times to get something right and be okay with being wrong 39 times? Not a lot. I mean, even if I get rejected by one school, I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do with my life? That's a lot of courage. But then because of that, that's why even up until this time, we have a good quality product. Now, it's going to be hard. Sometimes there's going to be rooms that are like, Monica, it's not like I can ask my children to take the test over and over again. I'm like, okay, understandable. But there's going to be some space that we encourage them, hey, wrong doesn't mean it's bad. What's your sandbox? Because honestly, all the best things in life took time. Sir Ken Robinson is another person that I'm a fangirling because he has spoken a lot about creativity, done a lot of research, but also I think would resonate with all of you, particularly because his focus was for children education. And he was adamant about how there's a very famous TED Talk that talks about how schools are not embedding enough creativity, which is why you're lucky that you're at a school who appreciates it. And one of the things that he emphasizes is that the reason why traditional school structures are limiting is that it doesn't prepare us to be okay with being wrong. And when we don't prepare ourselves, when we go back to that very first image, we constantly then freeze. Or at least that's how I reacted when something didn't go right, according to my plan, according to all my preparation, and realize, oh my gosh, what do I do? But that's not where the originality comes from. So where do we start? Warren Berger is another person that I respect and love his work on questions. And what he shares in his research about questions and questioning, in his book, A More Beautiful Question, he did this research and shares that, I'll start with a shocking stat, which is we all honestly have the capability to question, but this is how drastically it changes. When we were young, maybe 5 or 6, we used to ask at least 10, 20, millions of questions. I mean, all of you probably know, it's yes, my kid asked tons of questions. That's good. Please encourage them more. Because unfortunately, by middle school, we've been told no so many times, told that that's not the right question. That's not how you ask. I'm busy right now. Don't ask me right now. Ask to me later. We stop asking questions because we got the signal from the universe that that's not right. That's quote, quote, wrong. And that's how fast we stop asking questions. This is why in the workplace then when we have a moment of you know what, I think this is not working, but I'm not going to ask because my boss might think I'm wrong. So I'm not going to ask. And because I didn't ask, the chain of command later on experiences bigger problems. Noting this now, what can we do now to keep encouraging those questions, encouraging ourselves? To show that, hey, it's not just encouraging you. I'm going to continue to ask more questions with you together. So So now that we have the courage to ask and be okay with being wrong and make space for that sandbox, then it's also thinking about where is that lead of intention built on. And I find this so important. Service first and goodbye ego. I say this because especially if you study military security and strategics, I think a lot of the people that we quote admire in leadership tend to be a particular image. Charismatic, vocal, the one loud in the room, who's tallest sometimes. But I love this quote from Lau. A leader is best when people barely know he exists, when his work is done, his aim fulfilled, and they will say, we did it ourselves. This actually takes a bigger heart. Especially at a time that we want to make sure who got the credit, who actually did it, and who can I say that, I want to share it in my social media and brag about it. And that's all cool too. We should absolutely celebrate the work that we do. I would want them to. But what also would be important in a leadership seat is not saying it only for ourselves. That's why the example I want to share is Howard Schultz from Starbucks. And he shares lots of things, but one of the stories that I was really inspired is the moment he handled a crisis. This particular crisis was realizing that, I think it was hitting around the financial crisis, and they were losing a lot. I mean, if you remember, there were many moments Starbucks was going up and down. Yeah, this was one of the moments. Places were shutting down, people were panicking, they were not stop buying. People weren't just buying anything, so like expensive coffee, no, we don't have money for that. So yeah, the company was going down really fast and it was very scary. And Howard stepped in and realized, you know what? We have to have the difficult conversation. And this is not just about ego. This is not about me saying I'm going to do my work well and brag about it, but actually showing what we can do together. So he brought all the key stakeholders, which was all the coffee shop owners of the different branches, because how they operate, and the top leadership, and brought them together for a retreat and said in front of them, with tears, I am sorry. I'm sorry because I failed you. I created a system that didn't help you succeed. I was supposed to create a system that was supposed to help you thrive. I didn't do a good job. If you accept my apology and my sincerity, could you give me a second chance? And I want to help build a better system, but it's going to require some difficult decisions, and I want to get your permission that it's okay. How often do we do that as a CEO? Not often. That was a huge story that opened up later on and realized, wow, if somebody like Howard does that from that level, I mean, Starbucks was already quite big at that point, even though they were crashing. That actually is what connected them and be the brand it is still today. He wasn't thinking from the ego perspective. He was thinking from how do I serve my people first? So how do I plant that mindset? It's going to require patience, an abundant mindset. And of course, it wasn't just a speech that warmed people's heart. It's the actions that followed what Howard did that showed that, wow, Howard actually sticks to his words, and he's really determined about this, and he's patient. Because honestly, there's going to be many moments, and you probably could relate that, hey, we want innovation and something different, but honestly, no, not that kind. No, I've seen that, Monica. No, not that one. No, that color's too bright. I can't do that. Oh, sorry, we don't have that budget. Sometimes it's great to see role models and to be reminded that, hey, the no doesn't mean that you have to stop. Canva, I'm not sure if you have heard of the company. They're basically like the online Photoshop. It's fantastic. I encourage all of you to give it a try. Great to create all the different graphics. And one of the things is that even though it's so phenomenal, they say 40 billion, huge company. But when they first started, nobody looked twice. I'm like, oh, that cute thing? No, that's a nice idea. Sorry, no, I don't think this is feasible. Yeah, that's only for small numbers of people. Yeah, no, that's not really a tech company. There's countless of stories of where she now shares that the first few years was that almost every single day. That 40th try, she had to probably go through as many and more. But because she was patient, she's like, I'm not just looking for the yes that's going to come in a month. I'm looking for the yes for the future, and I'm willing to stick to it. That's why she was able to be where she is today. And now being one of the youngest billionaire and really leading this effort, she does a lot of philanthropy, speaks a lot about female entrepreneurship, and really encouraging that, hey, don't take no for a no. If you really believe in something, you got to stand up again. But you got to be patient, because it's not going to be overnight, which will take a lot of courage, and again, but it will help. And I believe that while all of these things are elements that you probably heard, I would like to emphasize that these are going to be even more crucial as a creative leader, that we need even more for this continuing generation. Because creativity can never run out, but we have to believe that it's never going to run out to continue to fuel. And so when you think of these 4 things, you would see that, wow, like, these are a lot of value-based. It's not just about knowing, it's thinking differently. When you think differently, you see more opportunities. In the Korean, there's an expression that we say, 아는 만큼 보인다. You see as much as you know. And you will probably relate to that too, right? Because you knew more and you experienced more, you were able to help make certain decisions. You could understand that, when they respond that way, I know that they're probably just upset and they want to be able to talk, not, really saying that this is a problem. How do we continue to think in that mindset? So this is why I want to really lead to actions, right? Because it's great that I hope that I've inspired you, ignited you, gave you some new tips, but what do we do with it? I want to start with 3 questions, which is, as I share these different points in my story, what's really standing out to you? What's resonating with you? What piqued your curiosity? That's good enough too. Sometimes it's not about, I don't have a fully baked idea, but it's like, this is just a thought. That's good. Start there. And what's already encouraging you to want to do something differently? The key is, whatever you decide to do in those 3 and more questions, is the consistency. My hope is that, that was like a nice talk and conversation and networking with other parents. My hope is that you continue that, right? What can you do to continue to make that space? And I find that physical health is such a powerful reminder. No matter how convincing I can be to all of you and hopefully trustworthy, if I say ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to be healthy for life because I went to the gym for 8 hours yesterday, you're going to be like, Monica, yeah, that's very funny. Right? Because that's not how it works. Same thing with creativity, same thing with mindset, and same thing with anything in our life. And this is the reason why the more we invest, it doesn't have to be in 8 hours every day, but the consistency in small doses, that's how we shift our mindset. That's how we gain these values. That's how we grow and then get curious and to realize, I don't know all the answers today, but I want to learn. And I know I will be okay because I will find a way. So a few language tips that I love sharing that I hope is a helpful hack for all of you that you want to keep in your pocket is these 4 things. Some of it will be reminders because you already do it all the time, but I find it still helpful. Ask before assuming. We do this all the time. You know what, I think I'm good enough. I'll just, I think this is the reason why they're doing this, or this is the reason why they're late. What if I just asked? Understand and defer judgment. Oh, you know what, look at the way they dress, is probably that, or they were rushing. Maybe that's their style, maybe they like it. Or this is the reason why they did this project this certain way. What if I just understood? Oh, maybe they want to do this project a different way. Maybe my child wants to communicate something with me that I'm missing. And active listening. I know all of you are incredibly busy, and I know this time is so sacred. And this is why the active listening space of just listening for 5 minutes, I am fully here for you, is so invaluable. You probably recognize it when your child is saying Mommy, Dad, I want your attention. Can I talk with you? They will remember that feeling forever, just like how you remember that. And as a result, the language of yes and. Yes, sometimes we want to say, no, we can't do that, but there's a reason why. But the curiosity of the yes and is, even though you might be leading to it, it empowers them to say, we can co-create this. yes, we're going to take vacation, and because this is not a right time, we're going to explore how we do this within the limited setting at home. Or yes, we want to be able to get to the park, and we want to be able to enjoy a good meal, so let's pack these lunches and then make sure we get back at a certain time. Yes, and even though in your instinct it might be, no, we can't do that, but makes others feel that they can. So a small hack. And then reminding that what we can do. Because honestly, the joy and honor that I have with all of you is that all of you actually have so many toolkits. This is why you're already here. This is why you care and want to continue to learn. And I'll be remiss to get a chance to not have that moment for all of you to share, reflect, exchange those information with one another. And so I want to get a chance to do a little discussion. But how are you doing? So far, so good? This is helpful? Good? So I want to share 2 questions, and I'll give you a few seconds to reflect first. But would like to invite you, use, the Spark question cards. These are different cards that I want to share as a gift that you can use as well. Spark questions or idea prompts, use it to have discussions, ideas, or even just conversations. Infinity cards are problem solving so that you can use for problem solving differently. And then Reimagine are cards that are prompts for one thing you can do differently in your routine. So use it even in your discussions, or use it as a reminder and tool that you can keep and have with your family. But for the time being, I would love to invite you for these 2 questions. What are new questions or insights you're thinking of because of today? And what is something you would like to try or explore doing because of today? So take a moment to reflect, and if you can, turn around or find each other, maybe 3 or 4 people in a small group, get a chance to share, and I'll give about a few minutes. I would love to hear what insights you find. How did it go? Good, good. I heard a lot of conversations and insights. Would love to hear if there's a few folks who's willing to share some insights. Back with the other. Love to hear from a few. Please don't be shy. We'd love to hear from a few on what are some insights, thoughts. Please.
Thank you. There was one comment to the first question. One word that inspired me today was abundant. And I think that somehow relates also to the first equation, where
Yes.
we saw evaluation. What I've been thinking is that I think during the creativity process, we need to think as if we had basically limitless resources, very abundant, no boundaries. And that is part of the creativity process.
Yeah.
Then when you come up to a new idea, a new scenario, which is the result of this limitless resource thinking, then bringing it to reality
Yes.
means making the evaluation, as you said.
Yes.
Which means that actually resources are there, time is a constraint or
Yes.
whatever, and then you try to squeeze in and get to the point. But the initial step should be really be without like trying to think as if you have all the resources, all
Yes.
the time, everything is possible. Really can release your creativity. So this is one thought that I was inspired. Thanks to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really appreciate it because you're actually hitting on a key insight, especially from a parent's point of view, right? Like, I understand there's probably many moments, there's like, Monica, there's a lot of constraints. We don't have, it's asking for abundance. I mean, like, that's not really realistic. But the moment we let that reality kick in before we get a chance to explore our thoughts, that's when we lose the chance to explore at all. And so I love your distinction, right? The abundance is, it's really important to start from the mindset, right? Like, yes, actual reality and time-wise may feel like a constraint, but setting the abundant time, I'm like, hey, let's do this thought activity. For the next 15 minutes, we're not gonna say no to anything. Think of all the ideas and then we'll build from there. And then because of that, okay, let's look at then where we can start with. That's part of the power. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it very much. Anyone else? Love to hear from 1 or 2 more. Please, don't leave me hanging. Well, I get very good at waiting. If Yes, please.
Really like the part about consistency over intensity.
Yes.
So, if you actually try to spare like an hour a day to approach things from creative views, differently, then it can become a part of yourself, and it can become a muscle that you can.
Absolutely.
Sometimes.
Absolutely. And this is why another beautiful, quick, not TED Talk, I mean, Simon Sinek does a ton of TED Talk, but there's a great video called Consistency versus Intensity that he speaks about. A lot of examples that he shares, even brushing your teeth, right? It's not the intensity of brushing your teeth one time, it's the consistency of brushing your teeth. I mean, there's no science that you got to brush X number of times, but it's important for your hygiene and health. Same thing in how we think about everything. And so thank you for sharing that as well. Anyone more? Yes, please.
I like your example of how one change made a huge
Yes.
difference.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We forget, right? The decision of also sometimes saying no to the ones that we have to is also an important decision, as well as saying yes. And I hope that reminder, when decision, consistency, abundance, creativity, all of that helps you realizing that actually I have a lot already in our sandbox. What can we do with it? What's that one decision that we can do each day? Because we never know the ripple effect. And you even coming here, that's one of the decisions. And one of the many decisions you'll continue to make that will continue to create. And sometimes, as Steve Jobs shared at the very beginning, we have no idea. I started building my career in nuclear weapons security because as a student, I wanted to be a diplomat. And my dot connecting now, at least from where I am right now, I realized that because I wanted to be a diplomat, I had strived to learn certain skills that now helps me be a better leader, a better speaker, a better entrepreneur that I would have never realized. Because in diplomacy, it's very important how you talk, right? You're not trying to argue. You want to build bridges. You want to be able to relate. You learn to listen. You think about different cultures. And so because that was a starting point for me, I approached business from a global, even though it's a small, tiny startup. And I approached my team members like, we got to have a global team. You want to be able to access everything, think differently, serve globally, and also approach different things. And so you never know how that decision now could change. Sometimes it might take years, but there's power to it. And so first, can you thank your friends, thank your parents, thank you for getting a chance to share. Very important to acknowledge this space. So look at the other person and say thank you for getting a chance, for sharing, and having a moment to reflect. I really, really appreciated all of you being here, taking the moment to pause, reflect, especially in your busy routine, especially in the morning. So thank you for joining us. As I shared, these are gifts that I want to share with you. I have a few more cards and I have more prompts and tools. So please take them, use them. Let me know any other questions you have. But I hope that I have now empowered you to think about, you know what? I have no idea how messy that reality could look like, but I'm not worried. We'll figure out. We can go there. And I know I have the courage, resilience, whether it's one decision, being consistent with it, or being abundant with it. And so with that, I hope I've succeeded in leaving you with now more questions than answers. Have I done my goal? Mission. Good, good. And so really appreciate it. I really am honored that you're all here, and thank you for sharing this time together. My name is Monica. I'm from InnovatorsBox. I got a chance to write some books, but most importantly, just sharing the chance, as Jane shared, the chance to be in front of you and speak with people. That's one of the beautiful things that I love doing. And so thank you for sharing this time, and thank you for all taking a moment to reflect. And so thank you.